everyone. We will begin the session now. Palkin and Shivani, if you can turn on your cameras.
Sure, give me a moment.
Yeah. Okay. So meanwhile, guys, I'm Sakshi. I'm your host for the day. I am from the Value Creation team at MBA and Beyond. And with me, we have our two speakers for the day, Shivani and Palkin. So Shivani, maybe you can go ahead with your introduction, and then Palkin, you can take it ahead.
Hello, everybody. I'm Shivani Bhatt. I've been supporting MBA aspirants with their higher education MBA dreams, basically. And I've been doing it for almost 10 years. Uh, we've had some very good success stories with my students. So that's about it. Palkin, you can join in.
Sure, thanks, Shivani. My name is Palkin Garg. I am currently a working professional at American Express. I took the services from MBA and Beyond last year. I joined somewhere around end of June, early July, and I applied to various schools outside India, primarily targeting the US geography, and successfully landed a few admits. I even applied to ISB in India and had a good, I think, conversion rate, 100%, I'd say. So had a great journey with the team, and I'm happy to share anything about my journey throughout the session.
Great. Indeed, it was a great success, Palkin. And Shivani, we have seen with you our applicants as well. So guys, how we will move ahead with the session is in the first 25 to 30 minutes, we will take on the questions that we have received already from the applicants and answer those. And towards the end, that is 25 to 30 minutes later on, we will take in the questions that we receive from the chat box. So what you guys can do meanwhile is start entering your questions in the chat box, and we'll take them on one by one as soon as we finish the questions that we have received. So to begin with the session, we have the first question, which is what are the key strategies for crafting a resume that effectively showcases both professional achievements and academic readiness for MBA applications? Maybe Shivani, you can start, and then Palkin, you can join in.
Yes. So, see, the basic idea is MBA resume has to be no longer than one pager, and ideally, you do not put in information which is more than 4 and 5 years old. Uh, Even if you have professional experience of more than 5 years, say 7, 8 years, after your 4 year experience, things which you put in a detailed format, or like say 3 to 4 bullet points, the rest others should go in just single pointers. Because see, a one pager resume is expensive real estate. We cannot use it for explaining something which has happened 4 or 5 years ago. That has to be number one, I say. But whenever we talk about the extracurricular activities, I do not suggest uh, putting in extracurricular activities which are more than 4 years old. It actually dilutes your resume anyway, and so that is one thing. The other thing, like if you know James Clear of the Atomic Habits fame, he said there are two skills of modern business: storytelling and spreadsheets, and know the numbers, craft your narrative. So I just have modified it a bit. So there are two skills of modern business school applications: storytelling and spreadsheets, show the numbers, and craft the narrative. So ideally, your resume should be talking about a lot of numbers. How many people you have led, what kind of projects you have handled, what kind of international experience you have had, how many, if you are working with global teams, mention, they should be mentioned, number of clients you have handled. So this is something, the project size, the so revenue earned, or uh, revenue, what do you say, the company, how you have contributed the company's revenue. All number aspects should be of prime importance. Every bullet point should not ideally exceed more than 2 lines. 1.5 at the most. 2 is good, not more than 2. If you are going below above 2, ideally make it 2 bullet points. Then most important is the clean format. uh, it should not be, what I say is there should be, number one, it should be in a reverse chronological order, which actually gives it a clean format to start with. And there should be spaces around it. It should not look like you've, like, it is real estate, but let us not dump the real estate with a lot of unfriendly and un no use information. Most importantly, your education will go below the work experience. Your work experience always comes first in your MBA applications. Like in your master's applications, we prefer to have your education educations and projects first. MBA applications will have your work first because it's a business thing. If you have a startup entrepreneurship, pro bono consulting, those things are very important to showcase your initiative takingness. So that should also be one of the things that should be showcased in your resume. More than that, if you have quantitative related skills or things that you know, like a Tableau or a Power BI. These are important analytical tools that should be showcased in your resume. Either you mention them separately or somehow put them in your bullet points. This is another thing, and it should show your your higher career advancements. So as you have advanced in your career, it should be shown. It should be showcased is what I is a better word. So when we go from a reverse chronological order, that is, you start from present and move towards your past. Your most recent work comes first, where you mention everything in present tense, and then as you go past, it should be mentioned in a past tense. Doing, did. Leading, led. So this is a very minor mistake usually people do oversee, which sometimes I feel costs the resume being the first thing that ideally they should be seeing. It kind of costs you heavily. This is all. It should be assertive, initiative skills like initiative taking skills, skills like team working, how you support the team. That should be visible in your resume. These are some of the basic points. What do you think, Palkin?
No, I think Shivani, you've covered it in a lot of depth. So I'll just speak about a few things from my experience, like how I did and how I created my resume. So, firstly, as you were speaking about the bullet points, and especially when you're talking about the work experience and you're putting it in the bulleters, like as Shivani rightly mentioned, two is at most that of one single bullet can be stretched. It shouldn't go in more than 2 lines. And how did I build that 2 lines was ACR format, which was action, context, and result, or let's say impact. And I think impact being the most important. So as Shivani was mentioning about the quantitative impact, like I believe every time in whatever professional field we are, it's not necessary that every single bullet point we do have like a quantitative number to showcase, but as much as possible and wherever it's feasible, do put in numbers as impacts. If number is not possible, probably write down qualitative impact, but impact is of utmost important. Like no single bullet point should be there in your resume which does not have an impact to it, because otherwise let's say for the person who's reading about your life through that one page, there is no point to read that point if there was no impact whatsoever which was created either in a person's life or on ground or in terms of numbers or revenue. So impact is very crucial when you are writing your resume points. And I think other points, I think Shivani has rightly mentioned most of those. So I'll just let those be.
Got it. Great. Thanks, Shivani and Palkin, for the detailed answer. We can move on to the next question, which is what are the specific advantages of applying in early action rounds, and what factors should candidates consider before deciding to apply to early action rounds? Maybe Palkin, you can be the first one to answer, and then Shivani, you can join in.
Yes.
Sure. So I myself applied in early action round, and I can speak about what my psychology was, and when I spoke to a lot of alums and people around me, the pointers they gave me, I'll speak about those as well. So see, it's a simple game. Let's say if if we have to fill up a room with 100 students for early action, the entire room is vacant. So you are competing for those 100 seats compared to all the successive rounds wherein a few of those positions would be filled. That's like first and foremost reason of why you should pick up early action. Secondly, if you're targeting international schools, be it European schools or schools in America, a lot of Indians do apply. So, fortunately or unfortunately, we fall in that majority pool. And for an MBA class, diversity is like a golden factor. So, they wouldn't want that half the class is Indians. Given a lot of Indians are applying, it's always advantageous to apply in early action, max R1, not beyond that, because otherwise, let's say if a lot of Indians have already applied in these two rounds, the spots for Indians would be filled. And believe me, there is like a proper demarcation that more than these Indians would not be selected in a particular batch for a particular school. So that is also one of the major reasons. Thirdly, people say scholarships. I believe that definitely for early action, you have like a humongous opportunity in terms of the scholarship you can land. But I wouldn't discount the fact that in round one, also you can receive significant scholarships. So I would say that in round two, your chances at scholarship kind of reduces until round three, it's almost negligible. I'm not saying that scholarships do not happen, but broadly and generally speaking, for Indians targeting international schools, maximum scholarships are rolled out in early action and round one. So that is also another factor. And also, like if you are attending the session right now, it's end of Feb, early 1st March tomorrow, right? So if you are dead sure that you want to apply this year, you have 6 full months at your plate before the early action round. So why do you want to waste that and wait for the latter rounds? Like just have your score logged and at least start applying. You can always prioritize that a few schools I'll apply in early action and a few in the later rounds. So that's it from my end.
Got it. Anything that you want to add, Shivan?
No, I think Palkin has mentioned it right. Like if you have a room to be filled with 100 people, and you the schools need to assure that there is a diverse, they have to maintain a diversity. You might as well apply in the early round. Also, see, what I feel is, uh, if you are interested in a school, you would your applying in early round shows your interest to the school. People usually take time to decide, like first round, second round, and sometimes they're not able to do it by first round, and then they finally think, oh, let us also apply in the second round. That kind of, you kind of miss 2 rounds. You kind of, the interest from the, like, any, even if at your, if I am or you are or anybody is looking, is a admission consultant or admission officer, and they see the first application by some person, that means I am interested in your school, and which is actually a great thing for any student, basically an Indian student, beating the diversity at the first play point, at the first step, basically. And if you have and you are, moreover, you are not competing with a wait list there. So in the first round, they still have a certain wait list with which you are competing in when you are applying in the first round. Second round, the wait list grows bigger. You are not only competing with the students who are aspirants who have applied in your round, you are also competing with the students who are already in a wait list with them. So first, early action, as many, not many schools have early action, but and the biggest best thing is you have a higher chance of scoring an interview. For tuck, I know that if you have a early action, if you apply in early action, you are guaranteed one interview. guaranteed an interview in early action. That actually helps you to prepare for an interview. If that's a good way to ensure that you are attending an interview, whatever mistakes, maybe if something is not done well in the applications, you can actually do well in the interviews. In that is what I feel. I always suggest, at least from Indian students, Indian, like the majority pool, and Indian male engineers become the bigger majority of the pools. Ideally, apply in the early action or first rounds. Better scope. Even with this lower GMAT, you have a better chance of getting through in the initial rounds than in the later rounds. Say the second round. What else? I think that covers it all.
That's
Yes.
correct, Shivani. Then we have the next question, which is how can applicants effectively shortlist business schools based on their post MBA career goals? Shivani, you can start, and then Palkin, you can take it ahead.
Yes. So see, shortlisting a school is a tricky thing usually. The first point of shortlisting a university or business school is your GMAT score and your, so three things which govern the first place. That is your GMAT, your WorkX, and your academic readiness. As in what has been your GPA and what other things you have done. So besides this, then it comes as your post MBA goals. What do you want to do post your MBA? And based on that, ideally there are schools. People do select those schools also. So if you say, if you are a tech oriented person, then the list of schools would be like, of the top schools, of course, Sloan, Stanford, has are the top schools. Then the next is Kellogg, Ross, McCombs, UCLA. These come as the second round, the second thing. The product schools are like Tepper, Darden, and Copenhagen Business Schools. Consultings would be Booth, Columbia, Tug, Fuqua, Harvard, MIT. Sustainability would be MIT, NYU, Stern, Cornell, Rotman, because these have courses in the sustainability. So if your post MBA goal is, say, sustainability or product or supply chain or consulting, you should be looking at the course. You should be actually, what I always ask my students is, if you're applying to the school, you might as well know the whole website and the school things by heart. There should be no aspect that should miss from your view. You should know what kind of courses they are offering, what kind of activities they have. So for example, consulting, look up the consulting club, what kind of activities they are doing. So then deciding becomes easier. The second part, like the GMAT score and your WorkX, is the first aspect, but the next aspect is going through the programs, looking at their previous placements, what kind of activities they have been offering. So based on that, a lot of things happen. That is what I suggest. Palkin, you can take it over.
Yeah. I would say that while picking a school, firstly, nail down on the geography, because so there are, I think, three big segments. One is US, one is Europe, and third is Canada. So if I primarily speak about US and Europe, there is a major difference in terms of the geography and in terms of the course duration. So US has almost every MBA program in US is a 2-year program. So your investment would also be upward of 1.5 CR. Europe is a 1-year program. So, the investment would be less, and B, the opportunity cost of being away from that from the job market would be lesser. Second, you can also understand where do you want to live post your MBA. Like, what does your do you want to work in US versus do you want to work in Europe? And Europe again is like a bigger geography I'm speaking about. But let's say it's just US or Europe. So like understand whether you would want to work in America or you would want to work in US. I think this could also be one of your guiding factors to nail down the geography first. And after you've nailed down the geography, I think firstly filter it down to your post MBA goal. Broadly speaking, like as Shivani was saying, tech versus consulting versus product. These are three broad fields in which MBA grads enter into. So if I speak about consulting, which was my post MBA goal, most of the schools do fit in consulting. All of the M7s, most of the M7s leaving apart, I think one or two, the like top 10, top 15 schools, all of them fit in consulting. So then you can have different factors. But let's say for tech and product, you have specific schools which are good for product and tech. And I think you can get that list from Sakshi, Shivani, or anybody from the team. So that could be second criteria of filtering after you filtered down to the geography. Then you can filter down that, okay, this is my post MBA goal. This is where like broad sector where I want to work. So you filter down your schools based on that. And then the third criteria is your GPA or academics or your profile. So all of that is third because based on these three factors, your GPA, your acad, your overall profile, you can have this list of your aspiring schools. I think there are three categories, right? Safe schools, as schools you aspire for, and your backup schools. Like, so you can have like probably apply to one of each of these three categories is what is said in one single round, in, let's say early action or in round one, so that you have at least an admit after one particular round. So I think these could be three steps of filtering before you land to, okay, which are the schools that I want to apply in this particular round. And that's my take on it.
Got it, Palkin and Shivani. We have one last question from our pool of questions, which is how can candidates maximize their chances of securing a scholarship? Maybe Palkin, you can go ahead and then Shivani can add on.
Yeah, I think this is a very tricky question because there is no one single formula of how you can maximize scholarships. And from my experience, I think this is really a black box. Even if you go outrightly ask a particular school that what are your criteria, they will give you a very, politically correct answer. So long answer short, there is no single criteria or a group of criteria that if you check these 5 boxes, you will definitely land XYZ%. So I wouldn't fool anyone here. Like, honestly, there is nothing. Just have like a good profile. People say that probably good GMAT scores land you a good scholarship. But I have seen both cases, good scores getting scholarship and good scores not getting scholarship. So even that is not the sole criteria, I would say, to land a scholarship. So yeah, that's it.
Got it. Um, guys, we can take on the questions from the chat box. First is from Bhavna, which is what type of extracurricular activities to showcase in MBA application to boost your chances and waive off for a low GMAT or average GMAT or any low in the application. Shivani, maybe if you want to take this one and then Palkin get
Yes. So when we are talking about so low GMAT or not, extracurriculars play a huge part in your applications. And from that perspective, what I suggest is uh, a lot of activities. It should not be. So number one is when you are working on your applications, it should not be a last minute. You shouldn't think of going for your thinking for doing an MBA in the last year. So just 1 year before, or say 6 months before you decide, oh, I want to apply for an MBA program. That usually does not work. Okay, because your profile is something which is carefully done over the past few years. We as usually once you start working, you forget about building a profile for yourself. You are so engrossed in work. So from that perspective, low GMAT or no GMAT or anything, MBA applications need a work ex or need a extracurricular, and that too good extracurriculars. Extracurriculars then can be of many types. So there could be a social work thing that you are actively involved in. That could be a pro bono consulting that you could be involved with. There could be your own sport thing that you are interested in. How you are connecting with your community, with your surroundings is very important. This is just one aspect. And so just going out and helping out somebody once a week or twice a week does not usually cut the rope here. What you need to do is be more involved in the thing you are doing, the level of involvement and how you are connecting with the community. So if you look at the essays in your MBA applications, when they ask you about questions is how you are connecting with the community. What have you done for the community? What activities you have done lately? That that is a important aspect to showcase there. So from that perspective, when we are talking about extracurriculars, it can be if you are, so I say pro bono consulting. There are students who have helped new startups raise funds, or do help them say in their marketing activities, help them in their whatever NGO activities they have. That is a very good extracurricular that you can have. There are people who do have their own startups where they have tried to do something. That can be a very good extracurricular activity that you can be involved in. Sport is of course one that you have to be. So this my what I think is why they need a sport or a extracurricular activities, not because where how like for the application sake, but these are the points where you will go and connect with your cohort, where after your class, after your course. So you have a club, you have your projects or assignments where you do, where you connect for a academic purpose, but extra academic areas where you connect, and those are the connections which will last the longest. From that perspective, you have to develop carefully craft is the word I'd say, a set of extracurriculars over the period of last 2 3 years. As you start working, start doing something on your own. It is not only for your applications, for your own mental health and peace of mind, and yourself also, that you have somewhere else to go. You know people who are not in your own office. How do you connect with them? What do you do is important here. So, wave off thing, when you are saying of waiving off, not many business schools waive off their GMAT scores, GMAT. They waive off on very specific conditions, like Michigan Ross waives off their GMAT score if you have done the QRC program from Michigan Ross. That is one condition for them. Other schools have their own ways of doing it. So if you have a CA if you have done a CA, or you are a CFA level 2. So certain schools might give you a GMAT waiver based on your profile, but only extracurriculars will not help you get your GMAT waived off in this case. What do you say, Palkin?
Yeah, Shivani. So I'll answer both the questions. Firstly, like since we were speaking about extracurriculars first, I believe that don't consider it as a burden, as if you have to have a particular section of extracurriculars and have like three, four fancy things over there. Um, just see it from the other person's point of view, from the person who's actually reading your resume. Okay, if you were to analyze 10 different people, you are reading 10 different resumes, how would you how would you rank them, and what would strike? Because otherwise they are reading thousands of application every day. So just think of extracurriculars as something that talks about your personality, something that when the other person is reading your resume, they would recall saying that, okay, it's that, okay, cricketer guy or something like that, because that person has mentioned a lot about cricket. I mean, not lot, but something significant about, let's say, cricket, for example, in his or her resume. So when you guys speak about extracurriculars, first thing I think don't right now, today, or in the upcoming months, don't start off something new and say that I've been doing that since the last 3 months while you're writing your application, because that clearly shows that you've done that only for application. So have, like, do something for at least 6 7 months before you actually put it down on your application. And also, don't think that you have to start something new, because everybody, even if you have the most mundane lives, I have had that, and I thought that I just do a 9 to 5, so how could I have extracurriculars? But even if I could write, I believe everybody can write something in their resume as extracurriculars. Okay, you have done something at school, let's say some social work, everybody kind of joins NSS, so you can just glorify it a little and say if you have done that, not just in your school time, but let's say for an extended period. If you are working somewhere, you might have joined some pillars at work, some professional pillars, and you can talk about that and just talk about with so much interest and depth that how that interested you, and with that how you could create some kind of impact in probably some person's life or throughout the organization or something like that, and that then simply becomes your extracurricular activity. So that's on extracurriculars. And second, on waiving of GMAT, I think Shivani has covered most of it. Very specific schools and only on very specific requests do they waive off GMAT. The cases I know of is, let's say if somebody is from an army, somebody is from Air Force, or very specific, somebody has cleared all 3 levels of CFA, then also certain schools waive off GMAT. I've also known cases that when you fall in that category of GMAT being waived off, still these students kind of attach their scores because there is no harm. And understand that if thousands of people are applying, everybody is applying with the GMAT score. So they would have an edge. Like, let's say if your profile is at par with another person, the only difference being the other person has a GMAT score, I think they would have like a slight advantage over your profile if it's like a neck to neck competition. So, given again, we if you have time, I would strongly advise either give GMAT or GRE before you start your MBA applications.
Thanks, Palkin, and Shivani for the detailed answer. We have the next question, which is how can applicants identify recommenders who can genuinely showcase their strengths and potential? Maybe Palkin, you can start off and then Shivani can add on some points.
Sorry, Sakshi, can you repeat that question? How
Yeah,
can
how can applicants identify recommenders who can genuinely showcase their strengths and potential?
Okay, so I think for that, I have like a few checkpoints. Firstly, whoever's writing your recommendation shouldn't be very far from you. It shouldn't be that he was your, let's say, if you're talking about professional recommendations, I think that's the only recommendation that's required for MBA. That so and so person was your leader or your boss 2 years, 3 years before, and now you have no connect with him or her in the last 2 years. Don't pick anybody like that. Pick somebody who's close to you in terms of you are working with him or you have worked with him or her in the last 6 months at least. First is that. Second criteria could be, I would say that pick a person you have confidence on. Like obviously, when we are working, we know that okay, if we are not on good terms or on the best of terms with a particular leader, don't go ask for recommendation from that person. Try and see if you can ask for recommendation from a person who can let you read the draft, or who can whom you can give some pointers and say if you can elaborate on it, or at least you have some say in what they are going to write for you, because eventually it's your application. I'm not saying write all lies about it, no, but don't be in a situation where you don't know what the other person has written and has submitted altogether. So always look out for a person who is close to you in terms of the work hierarchy in the recent few months, and b you should have some say in what's written, right? At least read the draft or give some points to the other person.
That you want to add?
Yes, so I think Palkin has said, uh, like given us good ideas on this. Ideally, a person who has led you, who has worked with you, should be the right one to give you a recommendation. Recommendations. And most what I will think is, you should have the person should be associated with you for the past a good one, more than a year is what is recommended. A 2 month association, a 3 month association is not a very good association to talk about in your applications. So the person should have a decent amount of, like, you should have worked with the person for a decent amount of time for him to be able to, from him or her, sorry, her to be able to um, cite instances from the work history, as in, say, what kind of team skills have the person has, what are the strengths of the person, what are the weaknesses of the person, how what can actually improve the person's improve your, if you how will you improve with a business school education. So those aspects, the person should have enough stories or instances to quote in your in your letters of recommendation, because these are the questions which are usually asked, and the person should be able to rank you on a scale of 1 to 5, or like a scale of 1 to 5, as in how good you are in this, how good are you in patience, and all the different parameters they ask you to. So ideally, more than a year is what I suggest, not less than a year. If you haven't worked with somebody who's less than a year, that is the first thing. The second thing I suggest is somebody from the recent past, not very far, 4 years. Somebody with whom you have worked 4 years ago is not the right person to give you a recommendation, or say 3 years ago is not right person to give you a recommendation, because people change, things change, situations change, works change, your KRAs change, your skills change. So the right person would be the person who's mostly recently worked with you on a senior level, somebody whom you have reported to, somebody who has and what happens usually is, when somebody is giving you a letter of recommendation, these are people, and people do forget about instances. I usually, that is why I suggest, when you are approaching your manager, your senior, your partner of your organization to give you a recommendation, take your resume, and alongside that, take a paper and add the things you have worked with him on, the what kind of projects you have worked with him on or her on. So if there are 3 projects, 4 projects, what kind of things you led on, what kind of achievements you have had. So the person also has a ready reference to quote in the essays, in his essays. So letters of recommendation in itself is a decent amount of work which has to be done. You should make the recommender's job easier. They should have something to talk about you. They are, so your senior manager, partners of the organization, these are busy people and they need support from you. Okay. Business schools usually prefer that you are not supposed to know the content of a recommendation letter. But when we talk about asking your manager or senior or partner for a recommendation, ideally do it as soon as you list down the schools. Much before that, you can start a initiative first discussion with him, that ma'am, I'm going to apply for business schools, will you be a recommender? So that would be a better thing, so that even the person is ready for a long time. You give them your resume, what kind of things you have mentioned, plus a list of things. And same, you can put it as an initiative taking skills. What have you done? What kind of projects you have handled? What kind of international experiences you have had? If you feel there is you this these aspects are your strengths, or these aspects are your weaknesses, or how you could improve with a business thing, quote it with instances to the person. The person also forgets, a human being after all. That actually works a lot with applications. That's all from my side. Anything else? Next, Neha. Sakshi,
Yeah,
sorry.
got it, Shivani. You have the next question. Maybe Palkin, you can answer this one, which is how much time does one need to dedicate for application process once you have a GMAT score? Is it doable along with work?
Sakshi, can you repeat how much what is required?
How much time does one need to dedicate for application process once you have a GMAT score?
So I think after you have your GMAT score, 2 months at max for your very first application is, I would say, like on the lower hand, 1.5 months. So see, like from my understanding, the first application is the most difficult to be completed because there's an application form which has 10 different details to be filled in. Then there are essay questions, and when you start writing about any of your essay, you straight away do not jump to the essay. First of all, at least the process that I followed with MBA and beyond was about the introspection part first. There were some general questions which need to be answered first, and I had to write about my strengths, my weaknesses, and ton other things before I actually jumped to the essay questions. And the day I started writing about it, I know, like, I was in a big trouble at I couldn't write about myself. And I have spoken to a few people. Everybody is in the same shoes that when you start your applications, you are not in that mind frame. You cannot answer questions about yourself. Like if you talk to yourself and you have to list down 5 good strengths about yourself, you'll probably not be able to do it tonight itself. But when you are in that process, in that grind, slowly and gradually things start popping up, and you are like, okay, let me write this as well. I can potentially put in that as well. And then you kind of review it with your consultant, and there's a lot of to and fro, back and forth that happens. Because of all of this is why I'm saying the first application takes a lot of time, and have at least 1.5 to 2 months for your first application. After that, I believe it's a comparatively smoother sail. And then every subsequent application should not take you more than 10-15 days max. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. We have the next question, which is from Saroj, which is what is the scope of MBA grads from EU schools like INSEAD, HSC, and others in Indian job markets post few years of international experience? Are they fit to apply? Reason being, domestic market is very different from international markets. Shivani, you can take this one.
Yes. Uh, from my perspective, I haven't, in fact, met a lot of students who are EU grads from schools like INSEAD and HEC who have come back to Indian market or a domestic market. The scope is, of course, very good, is what I believe, barring the present market conditions currently. But the MBA grads from anywhere are open to apply to anywhere else in the world, and the scope is as good when you're talking about schools from like INSEAD or HEC. I don't think that should be a huge worrying factor here, until unless not many students also, many MBA aspirants also come back to the Indian markets. This is a very and I don't think there should be any harm in coming back. It's not much different, I believe.
Got it. Anything that you want to add, Palkin?
Like I don't have like in-depth idea about the European markets. But even I have seen a lot of people coming back to India. Most of them have come back after they have cleared off their loans. So Europe, for European schools, as I was saying earlier, it's 1 year MBA, comparatively easier on your financial budget. So after you've cleared off your loan, and let's say if your priorities change around that time, there are a lot of people who come back to India. And since they were from the cream colleges of Europe, they have landed good jobs. If you're talking about, let's say, the current market scenario, the current corporate scenario, wherein I think for Europe and even for other geographies as well, we are seeing a downturn. So that I'd say is a business cycle. You can never time it, and you can never say that because right now there are no openings or very few openings. the same would be the case 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years down the line. So irrespective of the business cycles, I think which you cannot time, you can land good jobs in India, given you have had education from European B schools, the good ones. Yeah.
We have the next question from Weber, which is that he has heard that schools may target, change the targets to year, like the financial, like the percentage of international students from each geography they want to admit in a year. How frequently can these targets change, and how can we beat this? Shivani, maybe you can take this one.
Schools do change the percentage of international students, the mix basically. And it does not much depend on their plan or anything. It's actually what I am aware of. It actually depends on the pool of applicants which they have, and the diversity what they are expecting. So uh, you from that perspective, you're not thinking from one school. You're when you're doing an application, you're thinking from a pool of 2 to 3 to 5 to 7 schools when you're applying in each cycle. And this is one odd case, and this is not something you should be very worried about if you're planning for a application. Because I don't think this matters, because if you are only applying to one school, then you'll think of, say, okay, LBS is not taking many Indian students in the second round, so we should already target in the first round. As it is, Indian, if you are from India, we do not suggest going beyond the second. I thought these time this year onwards, I'm suggesting go only for the round one applications. Better chances of success, though second round also has a chance of success, but then you are kind of beating the percentage of whatever, if they are changing the percentage demography or diversity thing here. So that is how you can beat apply in the first round.
Anything that you
I
want
would
to add?
say, yeah, I would say, Vaibhav, this is like really not a question you should be concerned about at all. Like you're just screwing your mind here. This is the AdCom's job. Let them do that. Because honestly, if you know that they like if any given school has 40% internationals and this year they're gonna have 38, how does that matter? Would you not apply? You would rather compete for the 38%, right? So I would say that this shouldn't even be a question to worry about. You apply, you do you, irrespective of how many internationals any school is gonna take in.
Okay. I absolutely agree. I think recently in some intake for INSEAD, although it's like all the nationalities cannot extend beyond 13 or 14%, they still had more Indians than the rest. So definitely a
We
question
lead the
that
world in population, so we will lead
definitely,
the population in every business school.
totally,
That
totally,
goes without
absolutely
saying.
agree. Right. Yeah, we can move on to the next question, which is from Dhananjay. And I think it's a very important question if you're applying in early action, which is, should you apply for early action round when the college is offering this fall lower in your priority list of colleges? Because even if you get an admit and need to pay a fee for confirming your seat, you'd want to wait for your priority school's result, which will be announced later. Palkin, if you can take this one.
The simple answer is no. You should not, because you've rightly pointed out that you will have to confirm your seat. So I'll tell you my experience. I applied in Duke early action and the result came on 19th of October. And I had to pay my first deposit by 5th of December, which was a strategic date. It was put in such a fashion that all other round one results was coming out after 5th of December. So in order to secure one seat, I had to pay in my deposit for Duke. And this is not just here, like schools are also smart enough, and these are business schools. So the due date for the first installment for any early action would be before your results of any other schools for round one comes out. So if any school is low on your priority, I would say apply for those later on, R1 or R2, but never put them in the early action. Early action should ideally be the case that that's your target school or that's your dream school, that you really want to get in there if you actually get through. But if you don't really want to get in that school, then do not apply for that in early action at least.
Yes, totally agree with Palkin here. So if it's not a priority, why do you go through the pain of applying it in the early round? These are intensive application processes. Though the application process will help you in your next applications, being prepared is a good thing. But if it's not a priority, as it is not many schools offer you early action. Three or four or five schools have it on and in totality. So do your due diligence, do your research, and then only apply. Then only shortlist your schools. Is what I suggest here.
Great. I hope, Dhananjay, we have answered the question. The next question is from Venkat, which is applying with 2 years work ex good, will have 3 years work experience before joining the program.
Okay. So most business schools, as we know, for an MBA application, you need to have at least a 2-year work ex. 2 years is just the minimum qualification that you have to have. Okay, that doesn't mean you can get a seat. You can get an admit offer, and it also doesn't mean that you cannot. It is basically what kind of profile you have built over these 2 years, or maybe say last 4 years that we are talking about here. If you will be 3 years work ex before you join the program. So basically in this September it is 2 years, and next September it is 3 years. I would suggest wait for 1 year and then apply the next year. Venkat, you being a male is a guy, is what I'm saying, it becomes slightly difficult. Women candidates still have a better say in this area rather than the male candidates. Uh, get at least a 3-year work ex and be in the good area, like the 80% area where the students are there with a 3-year work ex. That would be better for you to apply to.
Got it, Shivani. I hope we have answered your question, Venkat. We have one last question, which is, can you
Sakshi,
share
before that,
tips?
I'd just
Yeah,
like to add for
okay.
Venkat. So I'd say that if you apply at 2 years, get in at three, it's not that you might not get in. You potentially can get in, even if the chances are bleak. The schools might take in, but I believe after you have been admitted, you'll not be able to join the school because you'll not fit in. The crowd or the class that will be around you will have on an average 5 6 years of work experience, and you on the other hand would be coming in with just 2 3 years of work experience, so you'll be lost in that crowd. So it's more from the point of view of being a fit in the class rather than just landing and admit to a particular B school. Again, reiterating, you might land and admit in one of the B schools, but you'll not be able to fit in the class. You'll not be able to understand the psyche of your peers themselves. So it does not make sense in that fashion to apply with such low work experience. Probably wait out a year at least. Okay.
We have the next question and the last question, which is, can you share tips for effectively conveying leadership experiences in MBA application essays? Be Shivani, Palkin, any of you can go ahead.
Oh, Palkin?
Sorry, Shivani, I was actually reading the chat. Didn't hear the question again.
Okay,
I
so
just
can you
I just
share
repeated
tips
it.
for effectively conveying leadership experiences in MBA applications? You have just made your MBA application, so how did you showcase your leadership skills in your resume and applications?
Got it. So for me, how I understood leadership was in different aspects. Firstly, let's say if you're a people leader, which is the easiest to write, that okay, I was managing XYZ number of people on paper. That is one sort of leadership. If you don't have that, second is leadership of the project. You were leading a particular project, you owned the project, and how you led it from scratch to the final stage. That is also leadership, and generally people forget about it because it's actually leading a project. For people, it's like if you are leading other people or your juniors, that's leadership. No, if you're leading a particular project, that is also leadership, equally if not more valued, and that's what I wrote. The third could be taking ownership of different things. Let's say if you are in a project, you are a part of the project. Maybe you're saying that you're not leading it upfront, but what you're doing is you are dealing with different project partners across the globe, and how you are managing time with them, understanding their priorities. So I wrote about how one of my teams was in US and the other in Europe, and I was sitting here in India, and how we actually worked around the entire project. That is also leadership, because you were showing that maturity of how you were leading cross geography teams and working around that. So I think these are some different scenarios and narratives you can build around your leadership stories on this.
I think that was really insightful and in depth as well. We have done with all the questions. I think one question is left from Shenaz. Shenaz, I would advise you to book a profile evaluation call. After this session, you will receive an email from me. Just book a call, and the experts will help you with proper guidance. And that's it for the session, guys. Palkin and Shivani, thank you so much for joining in. I think
Thank
it
you
was
very
a very
much.
detailed session, and I hope all the audience, found it insightful as well. Thank you so much for joining in, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great weekend ahead. Bye.